Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first ever WBLT video. In this video, we're going to be looking at critical thinking and numeracy and how those two concepts relate to video games and how we can use them to better understand the game as well as improve our own performance. Now, for those of you who don't know, critical thinking and numeracy have some very broad definitions, but I've tried to pinpoint them down a little bit for us. So critical thinking is being able to analyze and evaluate information to solve a problem or form judgments. Numeracy, on the other hand, is the understanding and application of various number skills or concepts. Now, once again, very broad definitions, but you'll see where I'm going to use these skills today. The game that we're going to be playing today is Slay the Spire, developed by Mega Crit Games. For those of you who don't know Slay the Spire, it is a rogue-like deck building game, one that really helped push the genre forward and one that has taken kind of the world by storm over the last little bit, well, last year or so. The goal for today is to discuss and analyze 3 encounters and how we can use numeracy and critical thinking to best advance in the game or during these encounters. So, without further ado, let's get into it. For today's video, we're going to be using the Ironclad character. For those of you who don't know about Slay the Spire, it has 4 characters. Obviously, 3 of them are locked as this is the first run on this fresh account. With the Ironclad, it is the beginner class. Obviously, we start with it, but it is also one that lends itself to being easy to learn the mechanics of Slay the Spire. Now, first thing we're going to notice is we have 80 health, 99 gold when we start off, and we have the relic known as Burning Blood, which means at the end of combat we heal 6 HP or hit points, which is very important to note because that basically means we can take 6 free damage every fight. Once again, this is where the critical thinking is going to start coming in, because this means we can start looking at our plan on how we can take 6 free damage. Now, let's move on. So this is our beginning here. We get to talk to our good friend the whale. I believe Niao is the name. So it gives us 2 options here. We can say either enemies in our next 3 fights have 1 HP, or we have a max HP gain. Now, what we could do is if we were going a little bit more in depth with this game, we could be able to click our map and map out our plan. So for those of you who don't know with Slay the Spire, your goal is to complete what is known as acts. Now, this is the first act, Act 1. There's 3 acts to complete. So what we do is we start at one of these bottom paths here, and we work our way up. Now we have to choose the path we go along to best optimize our route and put us in the best situation to fight the boss at the top. Now, as you play the game, you'll learn that the bosses are, you can tell what this boss is, but after playing the game, there's 3 bosses per act. You'll learn which one each one is. But the big thing you want to focus with now is the actual pathing. So a couple things we'll notice. We have a legend here. So question marks are unknown. These can be unknown events, can be shops, can be fights, can be treasures, things like that. The merchant, where we can spend our gold. Treasure, obviously, we get a treasure. We can rest at a bonfire, or we can upgrade, as we can see down below. Enemies and elites. Now, elites are stronger fights. These are going to be ones that will require us to use our brain a little bit. That is for sure. So what we could do is I always look at these to try and figure out what is the best way to try and maximize how many fights I can get, but also save my HP and hopefully run into a store. So I try and run up this. See, we have a couple fights here. Then we have a rest. Then we have an elite, a shop, treasure, another shop, fight, campfire, fight. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Now you could decide how you want to do this. I know a lot of players who play this game a lot tend to try and maximize how many fights they get. They also try and look at how many times they run into elites because they do offer greater reward. So let's start off with just right here. Before that, we have to pick our bonuses here. I'm not going to pick enemies in your next 3 combats have 1 HP, as I've been talking about how we're going to run through 3 encounters. If the encounter has 1 HP, there's no point in running the encounter. All you have to do is hit 1 strike. So let's gain the max HP. So we'll start here, and we'll start talking a little bit about where we see math. Now, if you haven't noticed, we've been critically thinking about this since the very beginning of the video. We paid attention to our relic. We also took into account how to better optimize our route to the top of the room. Now, I'm sure some of you might be saying, hey, we could have looked at these other sides as well. And you'll notice that is roughly the same. We do have 1 shop here, couple fights, one shot, health. But this one gives me the option to take the elite, which here I'm locked into bouncing out, and then I'm not getting these other options for this, for the campfire. So I think we're going to stick with our original route, and we'll go from there. Alright, so here's our first fight. We are running into a louse, just two louse. So these guys are going to, one will be doing a strategic move, so he's going to buff himself, and the other one is going to be doing 6 damage to me. Good to know. You'll also notice that they have a unique ability known as Curl Up. Now, Curl Up means once they take damage, they're going to receive 6 block, and this is once per combat. So the first time I hit these guys, they're going to gain 6 block right afterwards. So I won't be able to actually dump all my damage into these guys because there will be block attached to them. So let's think about this real quick. With the Ironclad, the starting deck is 5 strikes, which do 6 damage each, 4 defend, which give you 5 block, and a bash card. Bash requires 2 mana, as you can see at the top there, deals 8 damage, and applies 2 vulnerable. Vulnerable creatures take 50% more damage from attacks. Now the 2 vulnerable means that for 2 turns it will take 50% more damage per hit, which obviously we have to use a little bit of math there to try and figure out, would that be better than just dumping in our strikes? So this is what we're working with to start. As we progress up the floors, we will gain more cards. But let's think here. So for the louse, the pink guy here, he has 14 health, which means I'm going to have to hit him with 3 strikes. Reason why, obviously, 14 divided by 6, we're going to have 2 with a remainder of 2. Once again, we're using numeracy here. Now, that means we're going to have to hit him with 3 strikes total to be able to eliminate that enemy. The same thing will go for the green louse. We're going to use blue here, because of the fact that obviously 13. So we're going to have to land 3 strikes for each monster. Not a big deal there, we can definitely do that. But now let's start thinking about how we can maximize our turns. Let's use our critical thinking. So with our critical thinking, let's think about it. We have 3 mana that we can use each turn. The mana cost is at the top of each card, so we'll be able to play 3 of our cards this turn. We're going to be taking 6 damage. So we're probably going to want to block for 1. So let's block for 1. Now we have to think, do we want to block again to gain up to 10 block, or do we want to take that 1 damage? This is a question you can ask yourself. If you're someone who's saying, hey, we have Burning Blood as our relic, and that means we're going to heal for 6 HP later, why don't we just use both of our strikes? So we're going to strike once, and you notice that this block comes up. So I could decide to hit this louse again, but it has 6 block and I'm not going to do any damage. So we have to go to the second louse. Now right here in this one turn, we went through a lot of steps of critical thinking. We first of all used some numeracy to start. We had to figure out how many times we're going to have to land our hits, as well as the fact is we need to make sure produce the most optimal turn, and also try to figure out, hey, what is going to make it so I can actually get through this fight without taking a whole bunch of damage. So as a little reminder here, I'm just going to put 3 ticks, and we hit for 1. And we hit for 1. Now, I just did that because now I remember I have to hit both of these 2 more times. Now, you might be thinking, hey, if you can't do basic math and you're saying it has 8 health, I'm hitting for 6, I should be able to figure this out pretty quickly. I agree with you. But we're also looking for, when this gets harder, when you get to fights that are more difficult, you're going to want a solid system to help you keep track of how you're doing your damage. Because as I've played this game before, I've got 2 more difficult enemies, and I've realized that I've lost track of where I'm putting my damage and why I can't get through some fights. So with this being said, this new round is 9 damage coming from this louse, who buffed himself to give him 3 damage, which means 3 strength, which means he's hitting for 6, but plus 3 is 9. This guy's hitting for 6 here. So let's think about it. What can we do? What is our best option? We have 3 strikes in our hand, and we have the bash. Personally, I don't think the bash is a great color right here because of the fact that we're not actually going to be able to do the most damage with it. Now what we could do is we could throw out all 3 of our strikes. We could take out the pink Louse and have this Louse with 2 health. Or we could play a block and take out this Louse. Either one works. So what I'm going to do is, once again, try and preserve as much health as possible. I'm going to play a block, and then at this point, you could play both strikes, or we could play the bash. Because I haven't played the bash yet, let's play the bash. Boom. I know I just said we're not going to use the bash, but it did 8 damage. It works out. So now, once again, we have to hit 2 more strikes, and lucky for us, we're good to go. Let's hit these strikes. So with Slay the Spire, once you win a fight, you'll get spoils. Now, you'll get gold, you'll get to add a card every time. Sometimes there will be relics and potions. So, here you go, card tip, we're just going to go past that. So, we get a choice of 3 cards. Now, each one of these cards has a different effect. You'll notice that we have Sword Boomerang, deal 3 damage to 3 random enemies, so total of 9 damage. Rupture, whenever you lose HP from a card, gain 1 strength. And Clash, which can only be played if every card in your hand is an attack, deal 14 damage. Now, when you're looking at these, you might be like, okay, some of these don't really make a whole lot of sense, especially if you're a new player to Slay the Spire. But what this comes into critical thinking right here is being able to say, hey, what does my deck have? What can it work with? And also, what does it need? Now, obviously, I'm not a master card player. I've never been someone who's put a lot of time into games like Magic or Hearthstone, everything like that. All of those have very concrete ideas of deck archetypes and things like that. And so does Slay the Spire. Personally, for this video, we're going to try and think of, hey, what's going to help us get through the next 2 fights? Now, what we have here is, I'm leaning towards Sword Boomerang because of the fact it's the only one that does damage. We don't have any cards that are going to be costing us any health right now, and Clash seems very unreliable when we're sitting with 4 blocks in our deck. So, let's pull the Sword Boomerang. So let's click on our event here. Nice. So here we go. So, as you walk into the room, you hear a gurgling and grinding of metal before you use a slime-like creature that ate too much scrap for its own good. From the center of the creature, you see glints of strange light, perhaps something magical. It looks like you can get some treasure if you just reach inside it. It's opening? Question mark. All right. However, the acid and sharp objects may hurt. So once again, this is where we have to use some critical thinking and a risk and reward type setup. So, we lose 3 health, but there's a 25% chance to find a relic. So, 25% chance, 1/4. Not the best odds, but for 3 health, first of all, we gain 6 every time we leave a fight. I think it's an okay trade. So, we don't. So, ouch. All you find is corroded metal and a bit of burning pain. However, you're still convinced that there's a relic. So, 4 health, 35%. Let's try it again. So we've lost 7 health, and we've not gained a relic. We could lose another 5 health with a 45% chance to find a relic. So this is where we'll have to sit here and think, do we want to spend more health? Health is a resource. Obviously, if this goes to 0, that's when the game's over. Once again, we're thinking, hey, for this video, we're going to be making 3 encounters. It might be worth it just to try and risk it to gain a relic. So I'm going to click one more time. After that, it's a little risky. Whew. All right. So we have dumped out way more damage than we were hoping to at the beginning of this. We're down, 12 health here after hoping for a single relic. Now, obviously, the chances have increased each time. Now we're at 6 health for 55% to find a relic. That's better than half. You know what? Let's click it again. At this point, we've been in it for a long haul. Do it one more time. All right, got it. So we get an Ancient Tea set after spending 25 health. Now, with this, the Ancient Tea set is whenever you enter a rest site, start the next combat with 2 more mana. Now, that's pretty great, aside from the fact that we're not going to be going to a rest site in this video, but this is once again a very good example of where is good critical thinking and poor critical thinking. Personally, I think I misplayed that because I just kept going. But some people might say, hey, I'm going to click on this once or twice. If I get a relic, awesome. If I don't, I'm not going to push it so late. But you'll also notice I started investing health, and I was like, okay, we've already invested this much. We should keep going. So we'll go here. Nice. So here, you duck into a small hut. Inside, you find what appears to be a forge. The smithing tools are covered with dust, yet a fire roars inside the furnace. you feel an edge. So you can upgrade a card in your deck, or we can obtain a relic as well as gain a curse. And you'll see this curse is pain, so unplayable. While in hand, lose 1 HP whenever you play another card. Once again, critical thinking. Where is this worth it? Personally, we're going to keep it easy today. I already lost way too much health. We're just going to upgrade. So upgrading a card in Slay the Spire revolves around everything getting upgraded once, aside from a couple cards that can be upgraded infinitely. You'll notice that here we do 3 damage to a random enemy 4 times, so we'll do 12 total damage. If we were to do Bash, it's 10 damage and 3 vulnerable. So I'm going to click on Sword Boomerang, and we'll upgrade that. Once again, another thing where you're going to be using critical thinking to think, what will better my chances in the next fight? Alright, ladies and gents, welcome to the second fight. Now, technically, this isn't the actual second encounter. It is the third. I skipped this fight because of the fact that I thought, hey, we're going to take this elite anyway. And I already spent 25 health on the event to get the Ancient Tea set, so why not push this a little bit farther? Let's actually take 3 encounters, but use the third fight and the fourth fight. Let's continue. So in this fight, we have the Cultist. Now, the Cultist is going to buff itself to start, and then ramp up its damage, which means we want to put out as much damage as possible every round. Now you'll notice that I have Metallicized. This is our new card that I picked up from our last fight. This one is going to be, we gain 3 block every turn, so we're going to put that down and put down our 2 strikes, because our goal here is to get the Occultist to 0. Or sorry, the Cultist, not the Occultist. Now, 53 health. If we're going to be doing 6 roughly each time, that means we're going to be doing, what? Going to have to hit 9 times. Now, don't get me wrong, we have a couple other things that will help us out, but we need to at least land 9 strikes if we were doing it with only strikes. Alright, so now we are going to gain 3 block, which means if we put down our 1 defend card, we are going to put ourselves in a good situation because of the fact we'll take 0 damage. We also have our Bash and our Sword Boomerang in our hand. Now, Bash is going to increase damage by 50%, which means if we were to use Bash here, as well as the Sword Boomerang, we would be putting out 8 damage plus 50%. Now, the big thing with Bash is the fact that it will look at the deal 3 damage. So it would be 50%, so 0.5, times by 3. Now, with Slay the Spire, so half of 3 is 1.5. With Slay the Spire, it rounds down. So that means it would be 1 plus 3. So it'd be 4 damage 4 times, which means we put out 16 damage with that card. Now, right now, we have to think, what's going to be better? We're going to try and get this to 41 if we were to do 16 plus the 8 from Bash. That's 24 damage, which means this Cultist would have 17 damage. Now, this 17 damage is good because of the fact that means we would be able to be close to win with strikes. But the question is that worth taking 3 damage from this Cultist? I think in this case, for this video, it is. Once again, we're looking at critical thinking. What is going to put us in the best situation? Now, everyone's critical thinking is going to be different. Some of you might be saying, no, I'm not going to take that damage because I want to make sure I have the most health I can. But once again, you have to use a little bit of, there's risk and reward here, without a doubt. So we'll use Bash for 8 damage, and then do our 16. Drops him to 17 health. We'll gain our 3 block and take 3 damage. Awesome. Now, we have to do 17 damage. We have 1 more stack of vulnerable, which means our strikes are going to do 9 damage each. So, we'll just hit both. And we win. So personally, I think that was worth it. Now here's our choices for our next fight coming up. We have Vulnerable, Shrug It Off, and Intimidate. Intimidate applies a weak, which will lower people's attack. Shrug It Off will give us block and draw a card, and Vulnerable will deal damage as well, or damage to all, and apply 1 vulnerable. Personally, I'm going to be going with a Shrug It Off. Reason why is we do want some block. So now we make it to a campfire. Here's our choice. Do we rest and gain 30% of our HP, 26 health, or do we upgrade a card? This is the tricky part about Slay the Spire. Knowing when to rest and knowing when to upgrade. In this case, we have a lot of health. I think we have to upgrade. So we can upgrade. We can choose Metallicize, which will give us 4 block each turn. The Vulnerable, or Shrug It Off, which gives 11 to block, which is a large amount of block for a 1-cost card. You can also upgrade your strikes, ladies and gents, but for the sake of this video, I'm only going to focus on upgrading the cards we've added into our deck early on. So we'll upgrade the Shrug It Off to increase the block we'll be getting. So this is the Elite Fight, ladies and gents. The Elite Fight is obviously very different from what we've seen before. We have 3 enemies now, each with health pools that are large but not crazy high. And we also have the first use of our Relic. Now the Ancient Tea set gives us 2 mana. So we're sitting here with 5 mana to start, which means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can play every single card in our hand. That takes the guesswork out pretty quickly. But let's take a quick look at health pools. 41 health, which means we'll have to hit 7 times if we're just using basic strikes. 38 health, which means we're going to have to hit 7 times, and 41 health 7 times for strikes as well. So 7 times across the board, which means we're going to have to hit 21 strikes if we were to just only be playing strikes. You'll also notice that they have a artifact, which means it negates 1 debuff, which means if I hit this sentry with bash, it will not take vulnerable the first time. It'll in fact negate that. So that's another thing we have to worry about. So because of the fact that we can play every card at once, let's put them all out. Now you'll notice that with these sentries, 2 of them are going to be doing a strategic move, and then 1 will be attacking. So to do this, I'm going to focus my damage on 1 of the sentries and not try and spread it out between them all. Obviously, Sword Boomerang, we can't stop that. But because we have 3 damage over here, on the last one, we'll put 3 damage out. Or the other 12 damage. So that's the first one move. Nothing crazy. We should be getting through this pretty easy. Now let's go over what just happened. We got hit for 1 damage because of the fact the middle sentry was doing 9 damage, and we had 8 block. Now we have 4 dazes in our deck. These cards are unplayable and ethereal. Ethereal, that's the proper term, ladies and gents. Whew. So ethereal, which means this card will be in our hand, but it will leave at the end of the turn. It'll exhaust, which is good, but this means these are going to jam up our deck as this goes on. So the point is that we want to try and get through this fight quickly, but also make sure that we can take care of ourselves enough to not get destroyed by these ethereals. Or sorry, these dazes. So let's return this fight. So we'll notice now this time, 9 damage, 9 damage. So 18 damage we're taking. We're going to gain 3 from our Metallicize, and we also have Shrug It Off in our hands. So we're going to try and, again, maximize our block. We could Shrug It Off and use a defend card. That would give us 16 block plus the 3. Means we're sitting there at 19 block, which we would take no damage. Probably a good idea. Shrug It Off, get a draw, and I'll put them back. Now this fight is really tricky, ladies and gents, because of the fact you're going to try and balance, there we go, balance putting out damage as well as dealing with these ethereal cards. So once again, 9 damage. So I'm going to use Shrug It Off every time because it'll completely block. And now we have defends and bash. Now we can continue to defend, but it's not going to gain us anything. We're just going to be wasting mana. So let's use the bash card. So we did 8 damage there, and now we don't have the artifact. You'll notice though that we're at 12 damage or 12 health left, which means we have to hit 2 more strikes. So let's try and get that done. So this is 3 mana, 3 cards we can use. You'll notice how these dazes are really slowing us down and really weighing down our deck. So luckily for us, we got 2 strikes. And we can play a block, so we'll take 1 damage. Easy. Sometimes those daze cards actually make your life easier because you don't have to think about your next move. Like right here. I know I'm playing 2 strikes. That's what I'm doing. So Here's our these dazes. We can look at our deck here, and we know we're going to get strike and sword boomerang, which is nice because we're going to at least get a total of what? 18 damage? Can't be guaranteed 18 damage on one character, but at least 18 damage. So we'll take our 6 damage here. And now we're good. Lucky for us, we're going to be taking 9 damage. We have Shrug It Off. Might as well play it. And now we can choose. This is a tricky choice because we can guarantee 12 damage onto one character, or we can put 18 damage out across the board. This is a choice that comes down to the player. Numeracy-wise, you can think about it. You can say, okay, obviously 18 is higher than 12, but do you prefer having complete control over your damage, or do you prefer getting the most damage? So I'm going to choose strike for sure. And I'm going to sword boomerang it. There's a chance we actually finish off this middle century here. Nope, not lucky on that one. But we're sitting here at 8 health. So now we're at 8 health. We got lucky. We have the bash card in our hand. As you can see, we have our next hand could have a combination of any of these cards. It's 9 pick 5, right? So this is going to not be a great turn next turn, but luckily for us here, 8 damage, 8 damage. So you just play that out. We can play this defend for fun, and we're out. So now we're down to 1 enemy, ladies and gents. We haven't taken that much health, or that much damage, which is great, and we're looking in good order. So here, you can choose if you want to play both strikes and 1 defend, or 2 defends, 1 strike. Personally, I'm going to block and strike twice. Trying to get through this fight quickly, so that way we don't end up just getting turns where we're having dazes and a block. So we'll play the block and the turn. The block doesn't do anything in this case because it doesn't hold over, but it was fun to play the block. And here's where we run into an issue. Would have been nice because we have 18 damage, but this is 20. So we'll play our block and put down 2 attacks. Once again, we're getting there. Critical thinking helping us out here. Once again, we got our 1 strike. What do we have left? Alright. So here's a good talk about numeracy. We need to obviously do more damage. We need to do 8 damage. We can only do 6 with our strikes. Great. But we have Shrug It Off, which gives us block and draws a card. Here, we can see what's left in our deck. We don't know what we're going to be getting next, but we can see we can get a bash, a strike, or sword boomerang. In this case, we have a 75% chance to get the card we want, or 3 out of 4 chance. Luckily for us, we don't have to worry about which one we want. It doesn't matter so long as we don't get the daze. So let's hope. And we get sword boomerang. Awesome. So here's what we get. We get gold, oddly smooth stone, which gives us 1 dexterity. Dexterity means it will increase our block cards. So instead of gaining 5 block from our defense, we'll gain 6. And from Shrug It Off, we'll gain 12. Liquid Bronze, which will be a potion, which will give us thorns. And we get to choose a card. So here's some crazy new cards here. We have Impervious, Second Wind, and Thunderclap. And for the sake of this video, and for what we need in this deck, we have some block, we have some damage. Personally, let's pick up Impervious. It'll give us 30 block. It'll be nice in a pinch. Let's do that. So ladies and gents, this has been 3 encounters using Slay the Spire and looking at it through critical thinking as well as numeracy. There were some times I went a little bit quick there. If you're someone new to the game, hopefully you were able to keep up with that, and hopefully you saw where we can use numeracy and critical thinking in video games. This has been the first episode of WBLT, ladies and gents. Thank you so much for watching. See you guys later.